Have you ever watched someone get humiliated over something as simple as a plate of food? Imagine working yourself to exhaustion, raising a child alone, and then being told you weren't even worthy of lunch. What happened next inside the company cafeteria left everyone frozen in disbelief, and before the hour was over, careers were destroyed, secrets were exposed, and one little boy unknowingly reminded an entire corporation what humanity really looks like. Ethan Carter had learned long ago that life rarely gave second chances. Ever since losing his wife 3 years earlier, every morning began before sunrise. He packed lunches, helped his 8-year-old son Noah get dressed, rushed him to school, and then drove across town to the headquarters of one of the largest technology companies in the city. Ethan wasn't an executive or a manager. He worked in the building maintenance department, quietly repairing equipment, fixing electrical problems, and solving emergencies before anyone else even noticed them. Most employees barely knew his name, but they relied on his work every single day without realizing it. He never complained because every paycheck meant another week of keeping Noah safe, fed, and smiling. That particular Friday had already become one of the hardest days of Ethan's year. Noah's school unexpectedly closed early because of a water pipe emergency. Every babysitter Ethan normally depended on was unavailable, and after desperately calling everyone he knew, he had no choice except to bring Noah to work for the last few hours. His supervisor approved it, reminding him that family always came first. Noah sat quietly in the maintenance office coloring superheroes while Ethan rushed from floor to floor fixing a series of electrical failures that threatened to shut down an important presentation for the company's board of directors. By the time the emergencies were over, both father and son were exhausted. Noah's stomach growled loudly enough to make Ethan smile despite his own hunger. They hadn't eaten since breakfast. The cafeteria remained open for another 30 minutes, so Ethan decided to buy them dinner before heading home. It wasn't fancy, but the company cafeteria served warm meals at affordable prices, something Ethan appreciated every week. As they entered, the cafeteria buzzed with conversations between employees finishing their shifts. The smell of fresh pasta and grilled vegetables filled the room. Noah's eyes lit up as he stared at the dessert counter, but Ethan gently reminded him that dinner came first. They collected 2 trays and waited patiently in line. Then everything changed. A recently promoted cafeteria manager named Linda stepped directly into Ethan's path before he reached the register. She looked at Noah, then at Ethan's maintenance uniform, before shaking her head. Without lowering her voice, she announced that children were not allowed in the employee cafeteria and claimed Ethan had violated company policy. Ethan calmly explained the unexpected school closure and mentioned that his supervisor had already approved Noah's presence in the building. He even offered to show the approval message on his phone. Linda refused to look. Instead, she declared that maintenance employees were expected to eat during designated break hours and insisted the cafeteria was closing soon for executive preparations. She ordered Ethan to leave immediately without purchasing food. Every word landed like another stone on Noah's heart. The little boy quietly placed his tray back onto the counter. He looked down, embarrassed, pretending not to notice dozens of employees watching them. Ethan felt the familiar pain every struggling parent knows, the helplessness of seeing disappointment in your child's eyes while being unable to fix it. He didn't argue. He simply apologized, thanked the cafeteria staff for their time, took Noah's hand, and turned toward the exit. What nobody noticed was the elderly man standing silently near the executive dining section. He had watched everything. Richard Bennett, the company's founder, rarely visited headquarters anymore after stepping away from daily operations. That afternoon he had arrived unexpectedly for a private board meeting concerning the company's declining employee satisfaction reports. He preferred walking through the building unnoticed, observing the workplace without executives preparing staged performances for his visits. What he had just witnessed wasn't staged. It was real. Richard quietly asked one nearby employee what had happened. The answer made his expression darker with every sentence. He immediately requested security footage from the cafeteria and instructed his executive assistant to delay the board meeting. Meanwhile, Ethan and Noah sat quietly outside the building on a bench. Ethan checked his nearly empty wallet. There wasn't enough money left until payday to take Noah to a restaurant. He smiled anyway and suggested they could make peanut butter sandwiches once they reached home. Noah nodded bravely even though Ethan knew his son had hoped for a hot meal. Before they could leave, a luxury black sedan stopped beside the entrance. Richard Bennett stepped out. Neither Ethan nor Noah recognized him. The elderly businessman approached with gentle kindness rather than authority. He asked whether he could sit beside them for a moment. Ethan politely agreed. Richard asked Noah what he had wanted for dinner. The boy answered honestly. Pasta. Richard smiled sadly. Within minutes another company vehicle arrived carrying fresh meals prepared by the executive chef. Not cafeteria leftovers, but the same dinner intended for board members. Noah stared at the steaming pasta in amazement while Ethan looked completely confused. Richard then introduced himself. The color disappeared from Ethan's face. He had unknowingly spent the last 5 minutes speaking with the billionaire founder of the company. Richard listened carefully as Ethan explained everything from the school emergency to the denied meal. He never exaggerated. He never insulted anyone. He simply described the events exactly as they happened. That honesty impressed Richard more than any dramatic speech ever could. Inside headquarters, the board meeting finally began. Except it wasn't about quarterly profits anymore. Richard projected the cafeteria security footage onto the enormous conference room screen. Every executive watched silently as Ethan respectfully waited in line, politely explained his situation, and accepted humiliation without raising his voice. They also watched dozens of employees lower their eyes instead of helping. When the recording ended, nobody spoke. Richard finally broke the silence. He reminded everyone that companies weren't remembered because of stock prices or office buildings. They were remembered because of how they treated people with the least power. He explained that every employee represented the company's values, from executives to janitors. If dignity disappeared for one employee, it eventually disappeared for everyone. Linda was immediately called into the conference room. She attempted to defend herself by claiming she had simply enforced policy. Richard calmly produced the employee handbook. There was no policy prohibiting employees from temporarily bringing children during supervisor-approved emergencies. There never had been. Her decision had come entirely from personal judgment. Then another shocking truth emerged. Human Resources revealed multiple previous complaints against Linda involving disrespect toward lower-paid employees. Those reports had been ignored by middle management because cafeteria operations remained profitable. Richard looked around the room. Ignoring cruelty, he explained, was no different from encouraging it. Within minutes, Linda's employment was terminated. 2 senior managers responsible for dismissing repeated complaints were also fired for failing to uphold company standards. The room remained silent. But Richard wasn't finished. The following Monday, every employee attended a mandatory company meeting. Instead of discussing financial targets, Richard announced a completely new initiative called the Human First Program. Emergency family support. Free meals for employees facing unexpected hardships. Anonymous assistance funds. Leadership training focused on compassion rather than authority. Open reporting systems where every employee, regardless of position, could safely report mistreatment without fear. Then Richard invited Ethan onto the stage. Thousands of employees applauded before Ethan even spoke. Embarrassed, Ethan admitted he hadn't wanted anyone fired. He had simply wanted to feed his son. His words echoed through the auditorium more powerfully than any motivational speech. Many employees wiped away tears. Several later confessed they had witnessed the cafeteria incident but stayed silent because they feared becoming involved. That guilt changed them forever. Over the following months, something remarkable happened inside the company. Departments became friendlier. Managers spent more time listening than commanding. Employees who once felt invisible began receiving recognition for their contributions. Turnover rates dropped dramatically. Customer satisfaction increased. Even profits unexpectedly reached record highs. Richard smiled every time investors asked how he had achieved such incredible financial improvement. His answer never changed. When people feel respected, they do extraordinary work. As for Ethan, he was later promoted into facilities operations management, not because of sympathy, but because leaders throughout the company realized he had quietly solved problems for years without seeking attention or recognition. His calm leadership inspired those around him. Noah never forgot that frightening afternoon. Years later, when asked what he wanted to become, he didn't answer with astronaut, athlete, or millionaire. He answered, "I want to be the kind of boss who never lets a hungry kid leave without dinner." Sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from success. They come from watching one ordinary person choose kindness when bitterness would have been easier. That single plate of pasta became something much bigger than a meal. It became the moment an entire company remembered that every uniform deserves respect, every parent deserves compassion, and every child deserves dignity. Because in the end, businesses are built with numbers. But great companies are built with humanity. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional, inspiring stories that remind us kindness can change lives. Also, share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you had witnessed Ethan and Noah being turned away? Your story might inspire someone else to stand up when it matters most.